Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gabrowski, and I'll be your host for today. Thanks for joining us on this final day of March. March went by pretty fast, I think probably because we had those spring breaks mixed in there for classrooms in Canada and the US. And tomorrow we get into our April action. April, we are celebrating our amazing planets. We're going to have scientists, explorers, adventurers, and conservationists take us on some of their adventures around the world as they document this amazing planet we have and look for solutions to some of the problems we are facing. And then mark April 22nd, Earth Day, on your calendar, because we plan to go live from all all 7 continents plus the ocean. So that should be pretty fun. A newsletter will come out on Sunday with all the updates, so you can check that out there. This month, we had a little bit of an engineering theme going on. So we talked to some great engineers, from structural engineers to space engineers working on probes exploring beyond our planet. And so we have one more event before we wrap up, and we are going to talk about biomimicry. We steal some of our best ideas from nature. And joining us today will be Katie Losey. She's a guest writer at the Biomimicry Institute and head of partnerships and conservation at Natural World Safaris. So she's on a mission to help others see the natural world, not just as beautiful, but brilliant as well. So let me grab Katie from backstage. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hi, guys. So good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you with us today. Katie, where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Chappaqua, New York, a suburb outside of New York City, at the house I actually grew up in my mom's house. So yeah, where it all started.
Excellent. Well, Katie, we have classrooms in Canada and the US joining us today, which is great. Here to learn a little bit about biomimicry and why it's so cool. And then we'll get them going with a little Q&A action. But before that, let's let you take over for a little bit.
All right, sounds good. Let's see. It's my presentation. Great. All right. So thank you, Joe. Like I said, I'm here in the house that I grew up in, and ever since I was a little girl, ever since I could walk and talk, it reminded me I was completely enchanted by nature. I was a kid, I was playing in the stream behind my house, cuddling frogs, catching crayfish with my hands, and in a way, it really makes sense what I'm doing right now. I work with a company called Natural World Safaris, which means I get to travel the world and see the wildlife that I dreamt about as a kid in my own, in their backyard. So heading to Kenya to spend time with wild elephants, up in the high Arctic with polar bears that outnumber people. Even last month, I was swimming with sperm whales in Dominica. But wherever I go, I have my antenna up, not just looking for animals, not just looking at nature, but looking for ideas from nature. So ideas inspired by nature. And these ideas that I'm talking about are really changing the future of innovation. And it's a field that's called biomimicry. And the funny part is I didn't even know that word when I was your age, not in elementary school, not in middle school, high school, college, even in my first jobs after college, I didn't know what biomimicry was. And now I see myself as really a lifelong biomimicry student and being a bridge that can help others through my writing to help understand what biomimicry is. Because for me, it really helped me see the world in a completely new way. And my goal here today is that that's what happens for you too. Learning about biomimicry really helps you see the world in a whole new way and become dizzy with wonder and awe, just like it does for me. So go to the next slide. Yeah, so when you think of great inventors, who comes to mind? Probably like Einstein or the Wright brothers or Thomas Edison, Marie Curie. Mostly probably people in labs with huge ideas, right? But what if I told you that some of the smartest ideas on Earth didn't even start with humans? Some of them started with creatures who have wings. Some of them started with creatures who have tails. And some of the best ideas come from things that don't even have a brain. Okay, so before I dig in further, I thought I'd share how did I get here and what does a slug have to do with any of it? About 10 years ago now, I was playing with my niece Atlee, who's about your age, and we came across a giant slug pictured here. And we were playing with it. This is my leg. We were playing, it was on my leg, on my hands. And after messing around with it for a little while, I went back into the kitchen to try to scrub the slug slime off my hands, and I couldn't remove the goo. And I tried again and again and again. And I said to my niece in jest, I bet one day some inventor is going to be inspired by this slug slime, and it's going to inspire an invention one day. And then, I kid you not, hours later, we were in the car and we heard on an NPR radio station that slug slime was behind a new medical surgical superglue. And then we heard on Guy Raz's Wow in the World program the same thing. And we learned it's so sticky that it can stick two wet pieces of beating heart together. So it's kind of this new surgical superglue that inventors have created, inspired by slugs. And now I just learned that a couple years ago, they're using it as almost like a mouth Band-Aid, where it can stay in place while you're drinking and eating and talking, and it doesn't slide around in your mouth. So that experience opened up a whole new world to me. A slimy slug helped inspire something that can help people heal. Slimy slug can help people potentially save lives. How cool is that? I thought. So soon after, I signed up for a biomimicry course and I started writing for the Biomimicry Institute. And that's pretty much how I got here. Okay. But maybe you're thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never come across biomimicry before in my life. But I beg to differ. I think that there's probably parts of your life that are impacted by biomimicry all the time. And I'm going to ask you a question now. Who do you think invented Velcro? Humans or nature? If you answered nature, you're right. And here's the story. A Swiss scientist went on a hike with his dog in the woods, as I'm sure some of you guys have before. And he realized when he got back that his socks were covered in burrs and his dog was covered in burrs too. So instead of getting really annoyed, he got curious. He looked at the burrs under a microscope at his home, and he realized that all the burrs have this little hook. And you may be able to see it here. And he thought, maybe I can invent something out of this. So that's really how Velcro was invented. Velcro has one side that's made up of these tiny hooks. If you look at something, I don't know if you can see this, but it has one side that's just tiny hooks, and the other side are these little loops. And when the two sides are pressed together, the hooks attach to the loops, and the two sides create a very formed but very lightweight, strong bond. So that's Velcro. And the idea is, the scientist, he didn't invent the strategy. He looked to nature, who had been tinkering for millions and millions of years to create that solution for sticking to something, and then he copied it. He didn't actually use the actual burr. He just used the strategy behind it. So, for burrs, for seeds, this is a great way to sticking to animals to get their seeds dispersed all over the world. And for us, now we have something that can help us with our jackets and our backpacks and all sorts of things in our daily lives. But that idea has a name, like we've been saying. Hold on. Biomimicry. So it's simple. It's learning from nature to solve human problems. And if you dissect the words, bio means life and mimic means to copy. So that's the gist of it. And I bet you've already kind of understood this, but you didn't have a word for it. And just to break it down a little more, if we're going to get into the nitty gritty, the discipline of biomimicry has three central ideas: emulate, ethos, and reconnect. Emulate is what we've been talking about. It just means copying the idea. It's not copying the animal. It's not using the animal. Just like Velcro copied the hook from a burr, and the surgical superglue was inspired by the slug slime. They didn't use the actual animal. They're just emulating the strategy. And then part two, ethos. This big word. It really is how we choose to move through the world and how we choose to behave. And in biomimicry, it's really about honoring Mother Nature as our teacher, not something to mine or just use to our benefit or humans' benefit only, but a way of life that really supports all life, not just human life. And the third part is reconnect. And this is something so simple. It's just remembering that we are all part of nature. We're not separate from it. So, and just to sum all of that up, biomimicry is copying nature's ideas, respecting how nature works, and really remembering that we're all part of it. It's not something that's separate from us. And I'm guessing that most people here are already biomimics, but they don't even really know it yet. I'm going to take this idea a little further. So this is something that's really crazy. If you think about planet Earth being 4.5 billion years old, and the first signs of life arrived around 3.8 billion years ago, and then you think about human beings arrived on planet Earth about 200,000 years ago, it's hard to digest really what all of that means. So we've shrunk it here into this clock, right? And we've put all of Earth's history, all of the 4.5 billion years into one day. And if you do that at around 3 or 4 o'clock, that's when life arrived. And then if you go all the way to the clock, through the clock to just before midnight, that's when human beings arrived. So in essence, we're actually really young species, right? We just arrived in the last second, like 11:59 and 59 seconds. So I ask you guys, like, if that's the case, who has had more time to figure things out? Who has had more time to test ideas, humans or nature? Because the bottom line is human beings are one species with just 200,000 years on this planet. And we can never really compete with the collective knowledge of about 30 million species and 3.8 billion years of research and development and trying things out. And my take, from a biomimicry perspective, we are so much stronger if we work together. So the next slides, I'm going to really kind of walk through some of my favorite ideas that have been inspired by biomimicry, by nature. And this one starts with kind of a problem. Japan's engineers built one of the fastest trains in the whole world. It's known as the bullet train, but there was a big issue with it. When the trains came out of tunnels, they were making this big sonic boom sound, and the neighbors were going a little crazy. They couldn't take it. It was really irritating. It sounded like an explosion. It was not good. People miles away could hear it. So the engineers were stuck. They thought, how do we've made this amazing train. How do we make goes so fast, but how do we make it also quiet? And this is where things get really interesting. One of the engineers on the team was also a bird watcher. His name was Eiji Nakatsu. And he noticed one day when he was bird watching that he saw a kingfisher entering water, going from air into water and barely making a splash. And when you enter water, you probably make a big splash, right? But the kingfisher really almost no splash. It moved from the air to water completely smoothly. So the engineer thought, what if we copy that shape? What if we redesign the front of the bullet train to be more like a kingfisher's beak? And that's what they did. And guess what happened? The sonic boom disappeared. The train got quiet and it went faster and used less energy. So that said, a bird helped redesign one of the fastest, most successful trains on Earth. Incredible. All right, we'll go to the next one. Does anybody know what this is? This is a sidewinder snake. And when you see these things move, it almost doesn't seem real. They look like they're almost gliding across the sand, and they never get stuck. They never get stuck in the sand. And can I ask you guys, the last time you walked in sand, it's really hard, right? You sink, you slip. It's just really, I think I fell over the last time I was in sand. But robots also have the same problem when they're in sand. And that's a big deal because on Earth, that can mean a failed rescue mission. On somewhere off Earth, like Mars, think about the rover robots that got stuck there and they stopped working forever. So people are now looking at the Sidewinder snakes because they have a secret. They move two ways at one time. One motion moves them forward, and the other one moves their body parts kind of off the sand. So they stay stable. So scientists at like NASA, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, some of the best engineers in the world are studying these snakes to make better robots, because these snakes can go where we can't, and we need these robots to go where we can't, such as maybe inside collapsed buildings, through tiny tunnels, even across dangerous terrain, even off Earth, like we were talking about Mars. So the next time you see a snake, or specifically the Sidewinder snake, think about that you may actually be seeing the future of space exploration. So interesting. Okay, one of our favorite creatures on Earth, an elephant. They are amazing for so many reasons. They're smart, they're emotional, they remember things for years. But one of the things that really blows my mind is their trunk. I remember the first time I saw one closely. It went from acting like a snorkel while the elephant was swimming, to knocking over part of a tree to make room for itself, to gently plucking a piece of grass, all in seconds. So I thought, how is that even possible? And when you actually look into it, an elephant's trunk has no bones, no joints, just 40,000 muscles. So how many muscles do you think you have in your whole body? Less than that, actually. So engineers looked at the elephant trunk and asked, what if we could copy this? Because human arms are kind of limited, right? They're strong, but they're not flexible. They can be precise, but they're not that powerful. But an elephant's trunk is strong, flexible, precise, all at once. So scientists started building soft, flexible, robotic arms that move more like an elephant trunk than a machine. And these are some of the most in-demand robotic arms that are even available today. Some of these people are using them as prosthetic arms so they can move more naturally and pick things up really easily. And in factories, robots are using them to grab things without crushing them, so they can work safely next to humans. So this is a new invention inspired by elephant trunks that makes it strong enough to these new bionic arms or robotics are strong enough to pick up something incredibly heavy and also gentle enough to pick up something so tiny. And it all came from watching an elephant. Okay. Termite mounds. You may have come across them before. And I have this question, can bugs design buildings? And yes, they already have, is the answer. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen a dirt tower, and that's actually a termite mound. I remember I saw them recently on a little road trip in the US, and when I was in South Africa, I saw them all over the place. But you barely give them that much attention. But when I learned what was happening inside, I was totally blown away. It was where it got really, really interesting, because these termite mounds stay cool inside even when it's hot out. There's no electricity, no fans, no air conditioning, just really smart design. So what's actually happening is termites have these tiny tunnels, if you look at the middle picture, and these vents move air around. It's an intricate system that allows the air to go from solar air currents to go from high to low. And it's created a new nature's air conditioning. And that's why architects have copied this idea. If you look at that picture on the right, it's the Eastgate Mall in Zimbabwe, and it's able to stay cool without air conditioning. So just think about that. Tiny termites are helping top architects and engineers design buildings that use less energy, pollute less, and are better for the planet, and they look really cool. So yeah, how cool is that? I have a couple more examples, Joe, if you want me to continue on. I'll continue on with a couple more.
Yeah, Katie, definitely share a couple more, then we'll get into some Q&A action.
Okay, great. Okay, this is one of my favorites. I'll start with this. Have you ever walked into a glass door like the ones behind me? I definitely have. Now, imagine if you're a bird, you're flying through the sky. You see trees, you see clouds, you see open space, but actually, sometimes it's glass. Birds can't see glass. So every year, about 1 billion birds fly straight into windows, and it's avoidable. This is where things get more uplifting. Spiders have actually solved this problem. Birds can see something that we can't, and it's called ultraviolet light. And spider webs, they have tiny threads that reflect that UV light. So birds can see the spider webs and avoid it. And the reason that they want that is spiders don't want birds crashing into their webs, right, and destroying them. So innovators have copied this idea. They mimic those UV patterns that are from spider webs and built them into glass. Now there's this special glass with invisible UV patterns woven through it that birds can actually see. And we can't. So to us, it looks like normal windows, but to birds, it's a warning sign, stop. And this isn't just some future idea that we want to have happen. This already exists. It's already used at museums, universities. There's a new Edelman Fossil Park, a dinosaur museum in New Jersey that's used this special glass. Really, really interesting stuff. And so we can have our buildings and our amazing architecture, and birds can save their lives, all because we paid attention to a spider. Okay, this is the last one. And this is a really interesting one. Okay, the bizarre genius of a brainless blob. So this may be the strangest genius on Earth. It's not an animal, it's not a plant, it's not a fungus, despite its name being so-called, they called it slime mold, or the proper name is called Physarum polycephalum. And at first glance, you would never say that this slime mold is blessed with natural gifts. It's been on Earth since before the dinosaurs, but it doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have ears, eyes, legs, vocal cords, a heartbeat, even a single sensory organ. It remains one cell all of its life. And yet, remarkably, it can remember, it can make complex decisions, it can help out a friend, and it can recognize itself. So, and it can do things, this is where it gets weird, it can do things that we still can't. So, scientists are asking, what is it that the slime can do that we can't? And they gave it a maze. And what do you think happened? It explored different paths, made mistakes, backtracked, and then it found the fastest way through, faster than humans. Even Harvard grad students were part of the study, and they were absolutely stunned. So, what does that mean? Then let's go to the next. So, could a blob build a city map? Scientists tried. They looked at Tokyo's train system, one of the most efficient train engineering feats in the world, something engineers took about 100 years to design. And it turns out they may have been able to do a quicker job if they asked slime mold, because if you see that middle slide, they basically put a slime mold's favorite food, which are Quaker oats, and they put them in all the little major cities in Tokyo. And they let the slime grow out. And it built a network, which you can see there, those little tendrils those little yellow tendrils that are growing out. And it looked almost exactly like the real train system. And guess how long it took them to do that? 24 hours. Something that took humans decades, almost a century to design. So you can see the real Tokyo system below and the slime modes version at the top. Amazing. Okay. And here's a real life example of how people or engineers are using this. Scientists saw this and they started asking, what if we just use this to design real things like a car? A blob is incredible at finding the fastest, most efficient way to connect things. So they tried to create, they used it to create a new car. Like slime mold builds a lot of connections at first, and it keeps the strongest ones, right? So that's what they did when they're building the interior, that part 3 of a car. It kept the strongest paths. And so the engineers followed that design. So when you remove extra stuff in a car, it becomes lighter, simpler, and faster and cheaper, right? So that's how engineers use a slime mold strategy to build new parts of a car. So just to wrap up, at the beginning of this presentation, I asked, if you saw these inventors, who now, when you see this, you can see that they actually have a lot in common. Inventors don't just like the people on the left. They're also the creatures on the right. Some have wings, some have tails, some don't even have a brain. And nature consistently is something that we can learn from and love and admire. And I hope that the next time that you're outside, you can not only just appreciate nature, but really think like, what is that? And does it solve a problem has this part of nature solved a problem that that humans haven't yet? So that's about it.
All right, Katie, let me bring us back here and get you nice and front and center again. Thank you for that great presentation. I mean, it really illustrates how we've taken advantage of billions of years of evolution to help kind of engineer and construct the world around us, and that we can take inspiration from things as big as elephants to things as small as the cells in a slime mold. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I'm always fascinated by it. It consistently, it's just a new part of my life that I feel like whenever I'm walking outside, I see it through a new lens since biomimicry came into my life. But it's very humbling, right? It's just so humbling to know that something that literally you would say it's a brainless blob, it can do things that we can't. So it kind of redefines what inventors, engineers can even be. So
yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Well, to the classrooms who are tuning in right now, I can see some saying, hey, we've got some grade 3-4s in Hamilton. We've got people in South Carolina, some 3rd, 4th graders in Calgary, Alberta, others tuning in from Deep River. Don't be shy and use that chat sidebar. It's time for a little Q&A action. And so, Katie, the first question I have here is just about the planning phase or the design phase. Do people, the engineers, just look at the creatures, or do they do more? Do they scan them? Do they look deeper to try and figure out how they do what they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And typically there's one, like if we go back to let's go back to the burr and Velcro. It's usually one specific piece of it that they're really looking very closely at, and they hyper focus on that piece of the creature or the seed or whatever it is. And then they take that strategy and then they are using that to apply it. But they're not actually, something I wanted to really reiterate here is they're not actually using the physical seed or the physical or the whatever it is, the butterfly or the bird. They're not using those actual animals. They're just using they're hyper focused on one thing that they can do really, really well. So yeah, but it's a long process with a lot of people at the design table, right? It's not just, and it's usually, engineers working with designers and scientists, and it's a big weaving of different groups, which is something that I really love about biomimicry as well.
Yeah. So Web Classroom Connections are tuning into this right now, and they're saying that their class now wants a pet blob because they think they could learn a lot from it.
Totally. Oh, yeah. It's actually a thing. It's actually, I learned people become obsessed and fascinated by these brainless blobs. And they have, the funny thing is they have their like cult followings on TikTok. I mean, they have the whole fan club. But when I was learning from one of the scientists, this woman, Audrey Dessautour in France, I remember they sent a blob to space. There's some classrooms that have them, and supposedly they have their own personalities. Some blobs are really naughty and they'll go try to escape in the night and try to find, I remember she had like a box of Quaker Oats, and she she found it and they had completely devoured it. So it's quite funny because she said that she even gets quite attached to the different slime molds that she's worked with, and that different ones from, whether from different countries have different personalities, which is really, really kind of funny. Yeah.
All right. I've got some more questions coming in via the chat. Leah would like to know how scientists were able to see inside the termite mound to learn how it was constructed.
There's some termite mounds that have been abandoned, so they're not used by the termites anymore. So that's when scientists can go in and they can kind of shave off the front side of it, and they can see the intricate structures on the interior. So I think that in biomimicry, a lot of the part of the ethos and that reconnect is we really want to honor the life. We don't want to destroy it. We don't want to destroy it in to help improve human lives. It's, we're all interconnected. So they really try to use something that's no longer being utilized by nature.
Yeah. I was just in West Africa and we came across lots of termite mounds, some way taller than us. So they're really impressive structures, little skyscrapers in the middle of the forest or in the middle of the meadow, the grasslands. So it was really neat to see them and stand next to them. And then they were homes for other creatures too. Some of them had sand boas that were living in little cavities in the bottom. So
nice.
Yeah, they're apartment buildings for more than just the termites.
And I could get this wrong, and Joe, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the temperature inside a termite mound is so important to them because the termites may change from a female to male depending on the different temperature range. So that was something. So maybe that's part of the reason that they need it to be a really specific temperature. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's lots of creatures where temperature can determine, like sea turtles are another good one, depending on the temperature that the eggs are sitting at, that determines what ratio are male and female. So yeah, that's another cool thing in science. That's not unusual in the natural world. Let's see. Araya wants to know the sidewinder snake. It looks like they move really cool. Do you know much about how they're able to move the way that they move?
I don't. I can get back to you. It's such a good question. But I know that they're moving forward and sideways at the same time. And I don't know structurally how exactly that's happening, but I know that typically snakes are going one direction, but there's something internally that's allowing them to do that. And that's, what the innovators, the engineers are looking to. But it's a great question.
Yeah, and we can pose that as a challenge for our classrooms too, to take a little time and learn more about the sidewinder snake. I just did a quick Google search, and it talks about how they throw their body sideways in a looping motion. They lift their midsection while anchoring with their head and tail. So I think there's a lot going on there. So that might be a fun little project, something to look into as a classroom. See if you can figure out what it is about the snake, the sidewinder's body, that lets it move in this really cool, unique way. Okay, let's continue down the list. We have Elena joining us. Elena wants to know, do researchers ever do scans when they want to learn more, like say an elephant's trunk? Do they do x-rays or scans to look at what's inside?
Absolutely. Great question.
Yeah, it's important because, we never know about all the muscles and how they're able to do all those delicate moves. So scanning and learning a bit about the structure is pretty important too.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Holly is joining us, and Holly wants to know about that very first story you told us about the slugs and their slime. How do you think that scientists or doctors might have come up with that idea to use that slime on, it's one thing maybe to put two pieces of paper together, but to use on a heart or to use on a person? How do you think they came up with an idea like that?
Well, I think I go back to my experience, right? I mean, in that moment, I've washed my hands thoroughly 5 times. There's still slug mucus on my hands. And in that moment, I was like, there's going to be an invention. I'm sure that one of the people on that team had a firsthand experience in nature, and they were like, wait, there's something uniquely special about this slime. And I think that if I go back to that Wow in the World program with Guy Raz and Mindy, I believe that they were in Germany, and there was they were with the slug in Germany, and there is that connection. So oftentimes it's a real world experience where they are like, wow, there's something uniquely special about this. Let's really focus in on this. So that's, and then that led to something that can take a heart, which is, two wet pieces, and then have something that's so sticky that allows it to stick together. Because all of their other solutions that they had before, it didn't have the right makeup. So, but I think that says a lot. Oftentimes we think everything's happening in a lab, everything's happening, quarantine, and you have to have a lab coat on. And oftentimes that's not the case. It's so often that you have, you're out, that's why I think biomimicry is so great, because it's really encouraging us to get outside and to and it's not always like organizations that are the most well-funded, most NASA, the Navy, the Bill Gates, huge organizations are looking to nature for solutions, because they know, what? We've been on Earth for 200,000 years. These creatures have been here for, some of them, life has been on Earth for 3.8 billion years, and they've been doing something right, because when they don't, they die, right? So I think it's that kind of humbling the human perspective and opening your eyes up to the world of possibilities and innovations that are all over the place. And they don't always look like the innovations that we think they're going to, right?
Yeah.
Like even NASA is turning to slime mold, that brainless blob, to help map the dark cosmos. Think about that. NASA is turning to a brainless blob to help map the dark cosmos, period, the end. That's just like, it helps you reframe what's possible on this earth and off this earth.
Yeah. Gia wants to know, can you think of any other things, scientists or engineers are working on right now? Like maybe something that you've written about recently, or, one of your colleagues is working on, or something like that.
One example that I used was I had come to this thinking I was just going to write about slug slime and the medical surgical super glue, but this new kind of biofilm for Band-Aids, oral Band-Aids. So like if you had something that was exposed in your mouth and you needed a Band-Aid, you can't put a Band-Aid in there. It's going to fall off immediately. So these are these new Band-Aids that are inspired by slugs that are, I know that that's quite new. Let me think about some other ones. I know that they're looking to spider silk and how it's actually like stronger than Kevlar, from what I remember.
Bulletproof vest, yeah.
Yeah, like bulletproof vests. They're actually they're looking at spider silk to create new bulletproof vests. That's one. Something that I know was an idea that I thought was really interesting was just like the idea of a woodpecker. Like right behind me, I see woodpeckers, they bang their heads into trees 12,000 times a day, literally, and they don't have concussions, right? So I know that for a while they were looking to woodpeckers and what is it about the foam on their head, like what's going on in there, and so that we could create better helmets for kids that are, playing football or whatever sport it is. But I know that that's still in progress.
Yeah. I want to share a link here with the classrooms. I'm going to put it in the chat here on YouTube. So this is kind of cool. This link here will take you to a site with the top 50 or 50 of the world's best biomimicry examples. So from pine cones to octopus to fungi, there's a lot of really good ones there, including one that I think is pretty cool, shark skin. It's basically a modified tooth, but it helps them move through the water so well that when bathing suits were designed using that technology, they banned them from the Olympics because they were giving such an advantage to the swimmers who were using those bathing suits modeled after shark skin, which I think is pretty cool. So that link is there for you. 50 really cool examples of biomimicry.
And to add on to that, I believe that they're also using shark skin and those dermal denticles, because it's almost like spikes if you look at it really up close. And they're using that application on doorknobs and other places to have kind of a to prevent viruses, like in hospitals, so diseases can't transfer because germs don't like to sit on it, because it feels like it's sitting on a bed of needles, if that makes sense. So that's a kind of a new way where there's nothing toxic about it. It's just the structure of the film that they'll put on doorknobs or other places in order to prevent germs from being spread. But I think that's a really cool new application as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, now we're getting ideas coming in the chat. Like Tom thinks that birds could potentially help creating jetpacks with the way they fly and move through the air. So that's definitely a possibility. That's kind of cool. Birds are definitely able to propel themselves through the air in interesting ways. And Omar is wondering, just wants to know more about the slime blob. If it has no brain, how is it so smart? So, I'm sure we could talk a little bit about how it senses its environment, and that's how it's making some of those connections, moving towards the food that it wants to get to, and choosing the most efficient routes. Yeah, so Omar is just curious about slime blobs. If there's no brain, how are they so smart? But what would you say, Katie, that a lot of it's kind of instinct in something like a slime blob?
Yeah, I think that their superpower is that they know how to get from A to B the most efficient. They do not get distracted. They go from A to B the most efficient way possible. And that is something that they have down pat. Yeah. So despite not having any neurons, they literally have the same neural capacity as a brick of cement. There are over 50,000 academic papers on slime molds because of what they're able to do and the different applications that could be used for it. So it's something that I think when you boil it down, it's almost quite simple. It's just like literally they're going from A to B, but there's something really ingenious about that because they can do it in a way and faster than we can.
Absolutely. There's so many classes that are interested in the slime molds right now. One group is asking how they could get one for the classroom. And actually, I just looked online. It doesn't look that difficult. I think you can probably order something online. You can grow them on petri dishes, so plates with agar. So I don't think it would be that difficult if you really wanted to get a slime mold to do some experiments in your classroom. It sounds like you need some oats too, because they really like those oats. So if you look online, it definitely looks like you could find a slime mold to grow in your classroom. In fact, there's one here, 9 easy steps for growing a slime mold in your classroom.
Yeah, I know that one classroom, there's a woman, Dr. Dussatauer, in France, but I know that like the European Space Agency, they brought slime molds to the International Space Station as part of a classroom project. So maybe we can make that happen with you guys. I don't know. But yeah, you'll definitely need some oats on hand, and it may be fun for you. There's a little mini documentary called The Slime Minder, where that scientist, she talks about how, brain activity, it's usually limited to animals, right? But that slime molds can have their own personalities, and she kind of gets into all of the different things that they can do. Like they can run a computer, they can play video games. So people are really fascinated by them. But that could be really fun. I want to hear all about it. Please, please let me know if you guys end up doing that.
Yeah, definitely need to send us some pictures of your slime molds if you're able to get one online to grow in your classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really taking a turn into the world of slime molds. I get it, because they are pretty cool. And you showed us those great applications, from mapping our universe to designing a car to designing an efficient subway system. So
yeah,
I get it. That's pretty cool.
And to add on to one of your questions, I think somebody said, what are there new applications that aren't being talked about as much, but they are using slime mold. You know, when you think about mapping new cities and what's the best way for things to be organized, they're looking to slime mold to help them kind of for city planning or urban planning, which are big words for just like what makes the most sense when you're planning a city or a town. And so slime mold is a consultant for some of these engineers and city planners. So amazing. So yeah, I'm so excited. They've captured your attention.
Yeah, and so fittingly, our final question here in the chat is about slime mold or blob. And Elena's curious if they have a sense of smell. And I don't think it would be the same sense of smell like we do. It's more likely maybe chemical attraction they can detect or sense in their environment.
From what I understand, they don't have any sensory, like they do not have any sense of smell whatsoever. But maybe that's, yeah, I think that scientists are still learning about them and they're still kind of perplexed by them. But I do remember that they don't have a sense of smell. Yeah.
Yeah. Not the same way that we do to find our food.
Right.
We follow our nose.
Right. Definitely different.
All right. Very cool. Well, Katie, thank you so much. This was a great way to end our engineering events for the month. We hadn't talked about biomimicry, so I think this was a perfect way to end off how we should all look at nature differently. So maybe if we're walking home or taking the bus today from school, we should look at that natural world around us and see if we can come up with some really cool ideas, or see ideas that we've already taken from nature and we're using in our buildings and clothing and trains and everything else. I want to start out with a huge shout out to our classrooms. Thanks so much for tuning in with us today. Thanks for sending in all those really great questions. And Katie, thank you so much for letting us steal a little bit of your time and taking us into just how cool our natural world is.
The coolest. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to sign off for today. I hope to see you in April with some of our Earth. Now, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Okay,